Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Better Know a Highway, here on Virtual Road Trip, a series where we take a closer look at the interstates and highways that cross this vast country of ours. In today's video, we have a big one, another of the Zero series of Transcontinental highways. This one stretching from the southeast across the entire country to Southern California, Interstate 40. And real quick before we get started, just wanted to remind you to please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Always appreciate that. Make sure to check out the VRT Discord, link in the description below. And if you want to support this channel, you can join as a member for just $2.99 a month by clicking the join button below. And I definitely appreciate that. And with all that out of the way, let's get started. Interstate 40 is a long-running east to west highway. As one of the Zero series of interstates, it stretches across the entire country from coast to coast for a total of 2,556 miles while running through 8 states. Starting at the eastern end, I-40 first traverses the state of North Carolina, from the Atlantic coast to the Appalachian Mountains for 420 miles. The eastern terminus of I-40 is at a fork junction with US Route 117, just a few miles north of the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. It immediately heads north, away from the city, and heads into the populated suburban lands of the coastal region of the state. Within a short distance, 40 crosses the nearby Cape Fear River, and then passes by places such as Rocky Point and Wallace, as the highway keeps on its northern path, eventually reaching more agricultural lands, interspersed with populated areas, while having more junctions with the aforementioned US Route 117. Near the town of Benson, North Carolina, 40 has its first major junction with the long-running and heavily traveled I-95, giving drivers a route up and down the East Coast. Soon after, 40 reaches its first large settlement when it enters the Raleigh metro area, having a junction with the short-running I-42, and then connecting to a beltway spur, I-440, which provides access to nearby I-87 just to the east. Both I-42 and I-87 are still under major construction. Running along the southern edge of the city, 40 has a second junction with I-440, thus completing the loop. Then, it turns to the north to wrap around the eastern end, and then back to the northwest and away from downtown Raleigh, passing the local international airport, and then having a junction with the outer beltway spur, I-540. After this, 40 reaches the neighboring city of Durham, staying generally south of it by a decent distance, as well as having an intersection with the connection spur I-885, which heads directly for downtown. Staying on its general northwest route, 40 winds and curves its way past Durham, and once several miles to its west, it has a junction with the major highway I-85. The two routes then merge to run concurrent for a considerable distance of roughly 30 miles, as they both head in the western direction. The two routes head into the central part of the state, passing the small city of Graham along the way, and soon after reaching the city of Greensboro. Upon arriving at the local beltway, I-840, which heads north, I-85 ends its concurrency and splits off to the south, while 40 continues west, making a long curve south of downtown Greensboro, and eventually intersecting with I-840 once again, as well as the short-running I-73, which continues south. Then soon after, 40 passes another international airport before curving slightly southwest, where it reaches another metro area, this time the city of Winston-Salem. First, however, 40 has a complex junction with Interstate 74. A new interchange is still currently under construction, which will eventually allow I-74 to be continuous in this area. But until that project is completed, 40 has a junction with a temporary terminus of I-74 just to the southeast of Winston-Salem. After that, 40 passes south of the city core and is connected to it via an intersection with US Route 52. Also of note, at this same junction, 40 meets with I-285, a spur that connects down to I-85, now far to the south. 40 then stays on a southwestern path and heads into more rural lands of central and eventually western North Carolina. Passing more places and towns such as Statesville and Conover, the terrain begins to change as 40 reaches the foothills of the Appalachian mountain range. As the elevation increases sharply and the valleys deepen, 40 passes just south of Mount Mitchell, the highest peak in the entire eastern U.S., and soon after arrives in the city of Asheville and the fast-growing region that surrounds it. 40 stays to the south and connects to the nearby city via a beltway spur, I-240, which heads right for downtown. At the second intersection with the spur, 40 also has a junction with I-26, an important highway in the southeastern region. Once past Asheville, 40 heads deeper into the Appalachian Range and into the Great Smoky Mountains. Soon, making a turn to the north, the highway continues to gain elevation as it snakes its way through the Pigeon River Gorge. Winding through deep mountain passes, 40 also has several tunnels along the way, including one for eastbound traffic only through Hurricane Mountain, and twin tunnels through the ridgeline further west. Eventually, 40 crests the mountain range and soon after reaches the state line to enter Tennessee at the foot of Snowbird Mountain. I-40 cuts a path through the heart of the Volunteer State from east to west for a total of 455 miles, the most of any state it travels through. Entering the state, still winding through the Smoky Mountain Range, 40 begins to descend slightly as it enters the Ridge and Valley region. Here, it has a junction with the southern terminus of I-81, a major East Coast route, especially for trucking. Eventually, 40 reaches more populated lands, and soon after, the city of Knoxville, Tennessee, and its surrounding settlements. Initially upon entering the metro area, 40 crosses the Holston River, a tributary of the nearby Tennessee River. Shortly after that, it then connects with the Beltway spur I-640, while I-40 itself heads into downtown Knoxville and has direct access to it via a large interchange, while also having a junction with another spur, I-275, that goes to the north. At the next interchange, 40 meets up once again with I-640 and completes its loop. At the same time, it also junctions with the major north-south running I-75, and the two merge concurrent to head to the west away from Knoxville for the next 18 miles together. Both routes head in the southwest direction and soon have a junction with a spur, I-140, that goes south. Not long after that, they split, with 75 continuing southwest and 40 making a turn more due west, heading deeper into central Tennessee and towards the Cumberland Valley. As it blazes further west, 40 leaves the Ridge and Valley region and heads into new terrain, passing through farms and forest land and past places such as Crossville and Cooksville, as well as the city of Lebanon. Eventually, the highway arrives at its next major metro area and the largest in the state, the capital city of Nashville. Approaching from the east, 40 swings slightly south to access Nashville International Airport via two different local routes. Then it heads west towards the city core, where several junctions and concurrencies take place, the first of which is with I-24. The two routes merge and head closer to the city for roughly 2 miles, until 24 splits off and heads north, while I-40 begins a curved path around the western side. Immediately, however, 40 junctions with another major north-south route, I-65, and the two run concurrent around the loop for a little over 2 miles, passing close to numerous landmarks as well as the state capitol building, while having direct access to Broadway and other major streets. 40 soon splits off west and away from downtown all on its own. It has a junction with the spur route I-440 that acts as a partial beltway and then keeps west, at some points getting directly on the banks of the nearby Cumberland River, but not crossing it. Now turning southwest, 40 once again enters vast rural regions, with long stretches without any settlement, the closest being the city of Dixon, Tennessee, several miles to the highway's north. As it enters the western part of the state, 40 has a major crossing of the Tennessee River. After this, it keeps on its heading to reach the southwestern region of the state, and passing by places such as Jackson and Brownsville, before finally entering the Memphis metro area and its nearby suburbs. Before getting to the city itself, 40 junctions with an outer beltway spur, I-269. Then as it gets closer to the city, 40 junctions with an inner beltway spur, I-240. Turning northwest to loop around the north end of Memphis, 40 junctions with a segment of I-69, a newly formed designation as the latter is further built and connected. The two routes run concurrently south towards downtown together, before 40 splits off west after just a mile and traverses the northern edge of downtown Memphis, as well as passing directly next to the famous Memphis Pyramid. Then immediately after, 40 crosses the Mississippi River and leaves the state. I-40 runs directly through the center of the state of Arkansas, from one side to the other for 284 miles. Once across the Mississippi River, 40 enters the vicinity of the city of West Memphis. It also junctions with another major north-south interstate, this time I-55, and the two run concurrent for a short distance before 55 breaks off to go north and 40 heads west, and then slightly southwest, into the flatlands of the Mississippi River Plains. Running deeper into central Arkansas, 40 slowly turns from a southwest direction to a more due west heading, passing through the vast farmland of the River Valley and passing several smaller places such as Forest City and Brinkley. Eventually, after a considerable distance, 40 reaches the capital city of Little Rock and quickly intersects with the partial beltway spur I-440. A little further west, 40 has another junction, this time with the southern terminus of I-57, which is a section of relatively new interstate that heads towards the northeastern region of Arkansas. Throughout its time in the Little Rock vicinity, 40 stays to the north of the city core, as well as the nearby Arkansas River. A junction with the northern terminus of the long-running I-30 follows, which heads south over the river and towards downtown, while 40 turns slightly northwest, and has one last junction in the area with another partial beltway spur, I-430, then turning due north and leaving the capital region. Continuing on, and soon reaching the city of Conway, 40 makes a turn west and parallels the aforementioned Arkansas River, entering the valley it creates just south of the Ozark Mountains, passing places such as Russellville and Clarksville as it winds its way through the valley region and towards the western border of the state, where it reaches the city of Fort Smith. Just before reaching the area, 40 has a significant junction with the northern segment of I-49 next to the neighboring city of Alma, a highway that heads north through the Ozarks and into the populated Fayetteville region. 40 stays well north of Fort Smith as it heads past, connected to it by a spur, I-540, which forms a partial beltway just outside the downtown area. Just a few miles past this junction, 40 then reaches the state border and enters Oklahoma. Interstate 40 cuts a straight path through the Sooner State, passing some of its most critical areas for a total of 331 miles. Keeping on its western path as it enters the state, 40 soon reaches and finally crosses the Arkansas River just north of the Robert Kerr Reservoir. As it heads further into Oklahoma, 40 intersects with several local and U.S. routes, while traversing the Great Plains of the central U.S., and passing places such as Henrietta and Shawnee. After crossing the eastern half of the state, 40 then enters the Oklahoma City metro area, the most populated part of the state, and upon arrival, it first junctions with the connector spur I-335. Then, as it approaches the city proper, it connects with one of the local beltway spurs, I-240, and then the highway turns northwest to cross the North Canadian River, which is also known as the Oklahoma River in this area. Immediately after spanning the river, 40 has a junction with another of the major north-south running 5 series of highways, this time I-35. The two run concurrent for a very short distance while running along the north bank of the river. 35 then splits south, while a spur I-235 heads north, and 40 heads west, to curve around the southern edge of downtown OKC, and then quickly having more junctions, the first of which is with I-44. Then, after a straight section, it has another with the city's other beltway spur, I-344. Finally, after all the intersections are complete, 40 leaves the city, passing a few smaller suburbs and then out of the metro area altogether, and back into rural farm countryside. The terrain begins to show significant change in this region, as it turns from a lush green color into a drier brown color consistent with the high plains climate. Curving slightly southwest as it reaches the western part of the state, 40 runs past places such as El Reno and Weatherford, and after a considerable distance, Elk City, one of the larger settlements in this region, dipping just to its south, while a local business loop provides access to the city itself. 40 takes another quick dive to the south, and then turns west to finally reach the state line and pass into Texas. I-40 traverses the northern panhandle of the Lone Star State in a straight line for 177 miles. Much like the previous state, the terrain in this region is semi-arid and wide open, as 40 heads west, passing smaller settlements such as Shamrock and McLean, with not much else between them. Eventually, 40 reaches the largest settlement in this part of the state, the city of Amarillo. First passing just to the south of the local airport, and junctioning with a beltway route, this one being State Highway Loop 335, 40 passes downtown Amarillo just to its south, and it's here that the highway has its only major junction within the state when it meets up with I-27 via a recently built turbine interchange. I-27 is a short highway that heads due south and eventually connects to and ends in the city of Lubbock, Texas, roughly 110 miles away. After this junction, 40 winds its way through the western half of the city and crosses the 335 loop once again before leaving the area and heading back out into the vast openness of the high plains. Not much marks this part of the highway, aside from a few smaller settlements such as Vega and Adrian, as 40 curves both north and then south, and it soon reaches the border and leaves the state. I-40 crosses the entirety of New Mexico through its northern half for a distance of 373 miles. Not far in, 40 reaches its first region and the city of Tucumcari, carving around it and connected to the city via local Route 209, as well as nearby US Route 54. After this, 40 heads deeper into New Mexico in a southwest direction through dry, desolate land. After some time, it reaches the city of Santa Rosa, where the highway changes directions around it and then crosses the Pecos River several miles south of the nearby impounded Santa Rosa Lake. Now traveling in a nearly perfect straight line, 40 heads directly for the center of the state, first traversing through the Sandia Manzano mountain range, reaching an impressive elevation of 7,200 feet at Sandia Ridge. Then 40 descends back down and heads into the Albuquerque metro area, the largest population center in the state. Reaching the suburbs at the base of the mountains, it heads further towards downtown, where a significant junction with the major highway I-25 is located. Drivers can take 25 north to the state capital of Santa Fe, roughly 60 miles away. After this, 40 stays slightly north of the downtown core and soon crosses the Rio Grande River. Then, it travels through more suburbs and quickly back out to the open terrain and desert landscapes. Weaving north and south as it stays on a generally western direction, 40 gains elevation once again, running just south of the 11,000-foot stratovolcano Mount Taylor, and soon after, crossing the Continental Divide at Campbell Pass. Then, it heads back down into the westernmost region of the state and soon into the Gallup, New Mexico area. 40 quickly passes the city just on its northern side, with two exits connecting it. Then, only a few miles later, the highway reaches the state border and crosses west. Much like its previous state, I-40 traverses the northern half of Arizona through numerous regions for a total of 359 miles. Entering the state traveling on a southwest heading, 40 first enters the lands of the Navajo Nation and the vast desert terrain. It also soon passes just to the north of Petrified Forest National Park, and then curves around to reach the city of Holbrook and the Little Colorado River. After passing Holbrook to its northwest, 40 follows the riverbed now in a northeast direction, and eventually crosses it just before reaching the next settlement of Winslow, Arizona, making a sharp curve around the small city with a few exits connecting to it. Then, the highway goes back to the northeast, heading onward through the desert. Once again, 40 begins to gain elevation, this time up into the Colorado Plateau. The terrain changes from desert to dry mountain forest, as 40 arrives at the city of Flagstaff, the largest settlement in this region. Running along the narrow city for its entire length, 40 also has a significant junction with Interstate 17, a highway that heads south to the capital city of Phoenix, roughly 120 miles away. Moving on, just to the west of Flagstaff, 40 reaches its highest elevation for the entire route when it crosses the Arizona Divide, and then heads down for good as it enters a new region and traverses mostly empty land with a few small towns dotting the area. One intersection of note in this area is for Arizona Route 64, which takes drivers north to the south rim of the Grand Canyon and is an important link for tourism of the majestic site. Continuing on to the west, the next significant settlement is the city of Kingman, Arizona, where I-40 has a very important junction with US Route 93, which is a major connection to the city of Las Vegas, roughly 90 miles to the northwest. It's also at Kingman where 40 makes a sharp turn to the south, and after leaving the city, it eventually curves back to the west and makes its final border crossing as the highway spans the Colorado River and leaves the state. I-40's final state is California, where it runs through the mostly unpopulated southeast part of it for 154 miles. Turning back to the north after the crossing, the first place 40 passes in the state is the city of Needles, California, right on the riverbank. The highway bisects the city and has a few exits with it. Then it turns back to the west to enter the vast Mojave Desert. Traversing some of the hottest lands in the world, this section of I-40 is desolate, with few if any settlements at all. However, there are some interesting spots, such as the Lavick Lake volcano fields, as well as several mountain peaks. After a considerable distance traveling through basically nothing, 40 finally reaches civilization again in the city of Barstow, California. Traversing its very eastern end, it's not long before 40 reaches yet another of the 5 series of highways, this one being the last, I-15. It's here, at this partial junction, that I-40 finally terminates and comes to an end. This thus completes I-40's incredible 2,556 mile run. And that will do it for this extra long episode of Better Know a Highway. I hope it was worth it for you, and I hope you learned a little something along the way, as always. And hey, before you go, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I always appreciate that. Make sure to check out the VRT Discord. Link is down in the description below, and I hope to see you there. And lastly, if you want to support this channel, you can become a member by clicking the join button below for just $3 a month. And a big shout out to all my members. Thank you for all your support. We're trying to grow this number and grow this group as much as possible. So if you want to join these cool people, just click that join button down below. I really appreciate it. And now, with all that out of the way, make sure you enjoy the ride. And up next, Interstate 39. And I'll see you then.